On today's Locked On Predators, we're going to tell you the one big issue that is derailing this team right now. And you may be surprised to learn the biggest problem isn't about execution on the ice.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this episode welcoming any first-time listeners and, of course, giving a hearty shout-out to our everydayers and to our amazing Locked On Predators insider community. Even on recap days like this, we do love coming on and talking Nashville Predators hockey with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, on today's show, Emma, we're going to have to recap last night's loss to the LA Kings. That's going to include our one word to describe the game. And Emma and I are going to dive into what may be the biggest factor in this team's struggles on ice. And friends, what we're going to tell you may actually surprise you. Before we dive into all of that, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Yeah, Emma. It's the highs and the lows of covering the Nashville Predators. It is, we're trapped in a glass box of emotion, friends. You go, from a Colorado win to this performance last night against the LA Kings. Predators, of course, lost 3-0, 16 shots on goal, I believe was the final total for the Nashville Predators. So let's kick this off, Emma, with one word to describe the game. Do you want to kick that off for us?
Well, I'm going to have to thank Ryan O'Reilly for the assist on this one because I'm stealing his word and I'm going with pathetic. And that is how he described his own play. And I know that we joke about how he has a tendency to kind of blame himself for everything after games when things go wrong. But I'm not saying it was all his fault by any means, but I don't think I've seen him quite like this before. I mean, this was a degrading loss. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with pathetic.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly said that this may be one of his worst performances ever.
Of his career.
Of his career. And yes, we have told everybody, Ryan O'Reilly, sometimes Emma and I are like, should we chip in for a special sports psychologist meeting for him because he takes a lot of responsibility. But these are the frank conversations that are having to be had in the locker room, especially after a performance like we saw last night against the Kings. My one word is symptom, Emma. And, if you go to the doctor and, you have a runny nose or you're feeling stuffy or a headache, and they say, well, here's a nasal spray, but they don't give you the antibiotic for the raging sinus infection you have, nothing is going to get better. And I feel like we're seeing Nashville treat a lot of symptoms, and we're hearing them talk a lot about symptoms. But I think tonight, finally, maybe Andrew Brunette talked about the root cause of maybe some of the symptoms that we're seeing on the ice. And we are going to talk about some of the on-ice execution because we do need to talk about some of that, especially after this LA game. It was not good. It was, in the words of Emma and Ryan O'Reilly, it was pathetic. And we are going to talk about that. But I do think we have to talk first and foremost about the biggest issue, the root cause maybe of what we're seeing the Predators struggling to do on the ice. And Andrew Brunette talked about it post game. And Emma, what was your take before we play the clip? What was really your take on what Andrew Brunette was talking about post game? And do you feel like what we're going to hear, do you feel like he's got a good read on this?
I do, and it's hard because I think it's a very honest assessment of where this team is at right now, but it's also that much more frustrating because I think he has identified what the problem is, but there is no easy fix to it. There's no one person who it falls on to fix it either. And I think it's, that almost makes it more frustrating because, like, yes, identifying the problem is the first step towards, a resolution, but it's it's a really big problem and it's a big underlying problem. But I think, like I said, I think it was a very honest assessment of where this team is at. And it's something that, again, like we've said this before about a few in some different contexts, but you said the quiet part out loud. You said the
Mhm.
thing.
He said
And
the thing.
like, let's just get it out there.
Yeah, let's talk about this. And Emma actually just said the word. She said it. The biggest problem with this Nashville Predators team right now is they have a problem with frustration. This is what Andrew Brunette said after the game.
Yeah, we've sensed it for a while, and we just can't seem to correct it and get over it. I think I've talked about it enough here over the last couple of weeks about how it's a dangerous emotion, and it's getting the best of us, and it's kind of unfortunately leaked through almost the whole team. And frustration plays tricks on you. Frustration makes you think you're actually working when you're not working. Frustration actually makes you a poor teammate. Frustration is contagious. So those are some pretty bad things, and that's kind of linked through our group right now.
Yeah, he said the quiet part out loud. This team has a horrible, horrible case of frustration. And when we talk about all of the on ice things that they need to correct, I think Andrew Brunette hit the nail on the head when that frustration is creeping into everything that they're doing on the ice. Um, we've talked about this before on the podcast, and for any first time listeners or people who have missed this, one of the things that I did one time was ask my kids, what's the best parenting advice I ever gave you? Because I thought, I just want to hear how wise I was. And they said, oh, you taught us that feelings are like farts. They're indicators of something, but they don't always mean what you think they do. And I was like, wow, okay, that is not how I planned my legacy, but here we are. But 100%, that is the conversation that I feel like Andrew Brunette is having or needs to have with this locker room. Feelings are like farts. This frustration is definitely an indicator of something. And I love what he says. It doesn't mean what you think it does. Frustration makes you think you are working harder than you are. And the eye test for those of us sitting back and watching is they're not working hard enough. But to the players, when you are frustrated and you are in that elevated mental state and you are just trying so hard and you are so, it probably does feel like you're working really hard when everybody else watching is like, It's not happening. It's not happening."
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting observation, and I think there's a lot of truth to it as well. I know that, I have a trainer at the gym who one time was talking to us about the importance of doing, after you work out, doing the stretch and the cool down. It's not just to relax or stretch your muscles out or whatever it is. She was explaining that the body, when you're in this intensive, cardio workout, like your body, it kind of almost goes primal, like you're in this fight or flight. And your body doesn't know any different. that it's like, oh, this is this feeling. Like your body doesn't know if a bear is about to attack you or if you're just running on a treadmill. Like your body
Right.
can't tell the difference.
Right.
And so that's the importance of doing the stretch and the cool down afterwards to like bring yourself kind of back to that equilibrium, get out of that fight or flight. And so I think that, in a way, it's similar to what Andrew Brunette is saying about the frustration and how it kind of tricks you into thinking you're working harder. It's like, okay, I'm not actually running away from a bear right now. I'm just jogging on a treadmill, but your body feels the same either way.
Yes.
And so I think your mind can play tricks on you that way.
Coming up, Emma and I are going to tell you what we think the root cause of this frustration is, what the Predators are dealing with, and we're also going to talk about how this is affecting their on-ice performance. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Just like your favorite sports team, we are all driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and let them know you heard about Indeed on the podcast. Again, check it out at Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all going to be on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Emma. So we have identified that probably the biggest problem for these Nashville Predators through this early stretch of the season is frustration. And we are only 11 games in, and the frustration in that locker room, especially after last night's game, is sky high. And it is really impacting this team. And so I want to theorize on why we think they are struggling so much this early with frustration. And for me, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, for me, I think this team went into this season thinking we have it. And they do on paper. They have it on paper, but I think they went into the season with high expectations. And I think the returns not coming quickly, I think the initial struggles led to some frustration. I will also say, I think those early in-game line blender moments were a setback for this team and added to the frustration of like, hey, we don't have chemistry. Hey, we are not making progress on understanding one another and communicating together, which is another symptom that we've heard these, the players and Andrew Brunette talk about. So for me, I feel like expectations have played a part in the Predators being this frustrated this early in the season. But I'm curious what you think. What has got them this worked up this early. Remember, this is a very frustrating start, but we're 11 games in, and the level of frustration last night after this game is sky high, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, you saw Roman Yossi break a stick against a goalpost after LA's third goal, the empty net goal, and I
Yeah.
think that that's pretty telling. Roman's a guy who tends to keep his cool most of the time, and absolutely no one was cool after that loss. And I think that it's frustrating because that particular loss, and Luke Shen told us after the game when we talked to him, he said, there was a time, and he's right, where it was wide open. That was anyone's game for the taking. I mean, they were able to hold the Kings to 3 shots in the second period. Then what happened? The Kings turn around and hold them to 3 shots in the third period. So it's frustrating. I think that speaks to the fact that, and Andrew Brunette had said this as well, that there isn't a lot of trust right now. And
Mhm.
I don't think that that necessarily means trust in each other, like they don't trust each other. It's just they don't trust. It's hard. I mean, it's human because, if you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing and it's not working the way it's supposed to, you get frustrated. I mean, I can relate to that. I think we all can. And so I think that, if there's this level of lacking trust, it's like, well, why would I trust this system? Because it hasn't worked so far.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like you said, with the line blending and the changes and all of that, it sends a message of panic. And
Yes.
I'm not saying that Andrew Brunette is panicked. He's probably the last person on earth I would ever expect to panic about anything. But I think that it's kind of the same thing. It's like, am I being chased by a bear or am I just running on a treadmill? It's like, okay, there's, it's this message that we're sending out is very panicky and very kind of puts everyone on edge. And I don't think it's just about the line changes. I think it's just about every single guy on this team feels it. They feel
Mhm.
the frustration building, and each one of them individually feels some level of responsibility for it. And so now they're all being extra hard on themselves. They're not even being hard on each other or calling out
No,
each other. It's
no.
everyone's just like so in their own head almost. And they just, they can't fully trust in the system and trust that they're going to work together just because they're all in such a fragile state right now.
Mhm. It has not come easy for Nashville, and I don't feel like this team walked in and said, "Hey, we've got Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea now, like, this is gonna be a cakewalk." These are professionals, they know how hard it is to win in this league, but expectations and individual performances, and I think that's something really important that you mentioned, Emma. I think individual performances that haven't been where they have personally wanted to be create more frustration. And Andrew Brunette said it. It is contagious in the locker room. And I think it is important to say, look, this isn't a locker room that is turning on each other. This is not a locker room that is blaming each other. But I think it's frustrating for the players who last season found a way to execute this system to such success, and now they can't find it. And that is frustrating. And you've got some players that haven't really been going yet that you wanted to see going, and it just sort of snowballs. It is contagious. It makes you a bad teammate. Andrew Brunette said that in that clip. It makes you a bad teammate, not intentionally, but you're wearing a weight. I think it has affected a lot of what we've seen on the ice. One of the things that you had mentioned before the game that you wanted to see was, like, stop with the perimeter play. Stop passing the puck around and get it where it needs to go. And that was something that they struggled with. And I want to play a clip from Luke Shen, who talked about this. And as you hear him kind of talk about what the team needs to do differently, you can hear a little bit of the frustration in his voice. This is what he had to say.
I mean, that's the only way to win, I think. I mean, there's a couple guys in the league that can, wind it up and play a rush game or play from the outside and create opportunities. We got a couple guys that can score from out there, but majority of the goals you watch, highlights on a nightly basis of NHL and see. I mean, most goals are scored around the paint. Most goals are given up around the paint. So I mean, I don't know what we talk about it and not singling anyone out. It's just facts. I mean, you got to be, in order to win this league, you got to be good on the walls. You got to be good at the lines. You got to take care of the puck, and you got to be good around our goal and their goal. And it's just, I don't know, a little bit. I don't know. We got a ways to go.
Is it a focus thing, or is it like a will? I mean, where's the breakdown with that?
Probably all the above. I mean, when you're not generating much, I think it all comes into play. So I mean, easy to say one thing and solve it, but obviously there's more to it than that.
I think that goes back to Andrew Brunette saying frustration makes you think you're working harder than you are. And when you see things like this team knows they know the slot is not lava. They know they need to score greasy goals. They know that they need to take care of the puck. They know all of this and they want to do all of this. But I do think the frustration has gotten in their way when it comes to execution.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said earlier off of what Brunette said about frustration. It makes you a poor teammate. And it's not intentional. It's just like it's kind of this snowball effect almost. And I think that, when it comes to the play on the perimeter and all of that to me is such a telltale sign of this like lack of trust that they're having right now, because it's very timid. I mean, even if you look at the way that LA scored both of their goals last night, not obviously the empty netter not included, but the first two goals, those were ugly, gritty net front goals. They battled, and they weren't pretty, and they weren't, the most skillfully executed. And that's okay. But it was just, a belief and a follow through and, finishing the play and whatever other cliche you want to put in there. But I think that it's not just about that. There's so much more underlying here with the Predators and their frustration, like frustration with themselves, not with each other. And it's starting to affect how they play, that they're less willing to take risks, and they're less willing to drive to the net, and they're staying on the outside because it's safer. I don't know. It's hard because you can see flashes, you can see moments, but it's not all there yet. And it's hard because it's like, I think I've used this analogy before, but it's like when you apply for a job and it's an entry level job, but you need 4 years of experience. And
yes.
It's like, well, how am I supposed to get the experience if no one's going to hire me? And it's kind of like how the Predators are with stringing together wins right now. And it's like, the only way for them to get out of this is for them to start winning and start clicking and playing games together. But how can they do that if they haven't won yet, and therefore do not trust each other?
Yes.
And so it's this like kind of, vicious cycle that it's going to be really, really difficult to break out of. And I think that kind of leads into another point about, how their schedule has been so far this season. And I'm not making excuses. They're not making excuses for themselves. But I can, speak from experience, and I have done this before, that having such a home-heavy schedule that early really does take a toll. And again, these guys are pros, no excuses, but it's just kind of a fact of it. And it's one of those things that we're not blaming the schedule for the way that they're playing, but saying it certainly doesn't help.
Right. And coming up, we're going to talk about what the Predators had to say about getting out of Dodge and what could that do for this team and this level of frustration that keeps tripping them up. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It is not you against 1,000 strangers. It's just you against the PrizePicks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your pick hits, you can withdraw your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Look, we know the Predators are leaning big time on UC Saros right now. Why not include a more pick when it comes to Saros saves? Download the PrizePicks app today and use our code LOCKEDONNHL, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So check out all the action at PrizePicks. Run your game. Emma, you mentioned a home heavy early schedule for the Predators. And while on paper, that sounds like a great thing because you want to play at home and, you want to be in front of your home crowd. Let's be real. Even last season, Bridgestone Arena, not an easy place for the Predators to get wins. They struggled to win at home. And that's something that really bothered Andrew Brunette. It really bothered Barry Trotz. We're seeing a little bit of that here. And I think that it is difficult. And again, these guys are professionals. No excuses, but let's explain. It is difficult to work your way out of this mental situation when you are in it, when you are under the microscope, when you are constantly surrounded by it. How helpful is it? And why is it helpful to get out on the road? I mean, other than the fact that you are not having to listen to, sports talk radio or us, hopefully not us calling them the Viscount Chihuahua, but listening to people talk about how concerned they are about this team. What else is the benefit of being on the road, Emma?
Well, I have experienced this even from, a standpoint, a media standpoint or a team staff standpoint, having traveled with the team for a couple of seasons. It's different game day. Every single thing about game day on the road is simpler than it is at home.
Mhm.
Why? Because when you're there on the road, wherever, whatever city, that is the only reason you're there. It's the only responsibility that you have is to show up and to play, or in my case, to show up and cover the game. You don't have these external distractions. And I'm not trying to say that a family is a distraction. These guys love their families, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And I don't mean that to, diminish anything about that. But I think
Right.
that it's just the fact of it that, when you're at home, you have so many more things. There's so many more things going on. You have more responsibilities. You have, you know, spouses, you have kids, you have um, charity events with the Predators Foundation, you have radio appearances, you have all these, other things like community engagement stuff. And I'm not saying that any of that objectively is bad. It's just more. It's just
Right.
there's more things going on. Whereas and even little things that, you don't think of, they're just kind of second nature, thoughtless. You don't think that require mental energy, but they do. I mean, to the point where you have to drive yourself to the arena when
Yes.
you're at home.
Logistics.
Like just things like
Yeah.
that, like having to plan and having to make your own schedule. It's just different when you're on the road. I mean, You show up, you drive up, you walk onto the plane, you walk right off the plane onto the bus, you get to the hotel. Next morning, you walk right onto the bus and it takes you where you need to go. You don't need to think about any of that.
Yes.
And yes, you're in, more unfamiliar territory, I guess, but that's almost a benefit because you're sort of not as relaxed maybe. You're a little bit more on your game, you're a little bit more on your toes, you're a little bit more alert, because you're not in this, super comfortable place. Because sometimes when you can get too comfortable,
Mhm.
in a place or in a rhythm or a routine or whatever it is, and you just kind of you don't treat it with the same, attention that it necessarily needs. So I mean, again, I experienced this firsthand just for myself and everything I have to do on a game day. So much simpler on the road because, like, I didn't have to walk my dog. I didn't have to drive
Right.
myself to the arena. I didn't have to feed myself. They fed me at the rate. It's just little things like that that it's like, oh, I don't like, just I can just focus on the game and focus on what I'm here to do.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing that I think is a huge benefit of being on the road is it gives these guys time together. And,
Yep.
look, they don't need to sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya or anything like that, but they do need to continue to build chemistry and relationship. And we talk about chemistry as a line, as a defensive pairing, and all of that kind of stuff. We talk about communication as a group of five out on the ice, but some of that comes naturally when you're off the ice. And they don't need to sit around on the road and talk about the X's and O's of hockey and who needs to do what differently to enter on the power play, which, by the way, last night was atrocious. Atrocious. They
Yep.
don't need to do that, but just that time together, I think, is very valuable. And anybody who has been a part of a team, whether it's a work team or a sports team or anything, when you are away, there is a connection. And that's something I think this team needs, especially when they are dealing with so much frustration. Because right now, Nashville, it is not turned outward to anybody in the locker room. They are, for as frustrated as they were last night, this is not a team that is throwing anybody under the bus. You want to continue to build that connection because as a team, that's the only way they're going to get out of this. And continuing to build sort of that chemistry, those relationships off the ice is what's going to kind of pull this team in the right direction when it comes time to step on the ice. So I think you're right. I think as much as I hate to say it, as much as I hate giving up my grilled cheese on the first floor of Bridgestone Arena, this team needs to get out of Dodge. They need to get on
They
the road.
do.
They do.
And that element of it that you mentioned is huge. Like when these guys are at home, these guys aren't hanging out with each other. They're not going to dinner with each other. They're not, hanging out on the weekends. And that's not to say that they're not friends and they don't like each other. It's just that when they're at home, they all have their own lives. They all have
Right.
their own, again, when they're on the road, they're all there for one reason. And they can come together and bond over that. And right now, it might be a little bit of trauma bonding, honestly, because of how the season has
Yes.
started. But
Yes.
hey,
Whatever
take what you can get, whatever works. So yeah, I think, when they're on the road, it's like things, just experiences are shared with one another that you don't necessarily have at home. Even things like eating meals together that like they
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily do at home. And it's good to, just coexist with each other in that like less high pressure
Yeah.
situation.
You also do not have to impress a room of 17,000 people. They are
Yeah.
when they're on the road, they are really not trying to impress anybody that is in their actual physical vicinity. And there's something to
Yeah.
be said for that because again, that fan base, when you sit down at Bridgestone Arena this season, you come in and you sit your butt down and you have high expectations for what you're going to see. And so far, this team has underdelivered. Maybe the expectations were wrong. Maybe the timeline for the expectations were wrong, but they hover, like a cloud over this team when they don't perform. So look, Nashville has to work their way out of this. This is something Andrew Brunette is aware of. I would agree with you. I think Andrew Brunette has a very clear idea of what is not working with the team, not even execution wise, just off the ice, what is not working. And you can bet Andrew Brunette is going to address it, because if there's one thing we have seen with Andrew Brunette, he does not ignore a problem. So we're going to have to see what that looks like with the Nashville Predators. Of course, coming off of this loss, they're going to need to turn it around here early in the season. We will be following the team as they head out on the road. They're going to come back home for a game Saturday night, and then they're going to be gone again. Emma and I will be here to kind of track all of that with you as that happens. Before we wrap up this episode, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for this post-game episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.